Hello again. So this is part 2 from the same lecture. We are talking about the left to right shunts, but from the clinical points. I mean that you got the pathophysiology from Hatton, and now as a cardiologist and a surgeon, we will discuss how to explain what have been discussed in the clinical data. Before we start, I handed over a pre-test questions just to, this will be the main focus of the lecture. I will go through the questions. It doesn't mean to be an exam, so I will not receive an answer now, but after finishing the lecture, we will got an answer for this question. The first one asks about the VSD shunting left to right is a volume overload, but on which ventricle, left or right? Here we discussed the cardiac MRI can measure some data, so the volumes of the left and right ventricle in diastole and in systole, and the QP, what's QP stand for? Flow, quantitative flow. It's for flow. It's for flow. And asking about the pulmonary artery pressure, they can measure all except one, so one will be false. And the third question is about the transthoracic echo. We have a flow in the color. So if the flow is toward the probe, is it red or blue? And the fourth question discuss a patient with BDA with maximum velocity in systole 4 meters per second and in diastole 3 meters per second, and his blood pressure is 120/80, and the question about the pulmonary artery pressure measurement. And the following question is about how to measure the pulmonary vascular resistance, which imaging modality or which evaluation modality, and when you say the pulmonary vascular resistance is XX, which unit you use for it. And the next question describe a neonate 10 days old with a large BSD, and he has signs of pulmonary congestion, like X-rays congested, failure of the right, and so on. Is it true or false? And the seventh question is about the transthoracic echo have 4 well-known windows, and the question is to enumerate. Then the clinical signs of left to right shunt will be all except, and giving us some criteria. And before the last is patient with ASD shunting left to right, and the tricuspid incontinence is 3.5 meter per second. And he's describing the right atrium is usually dilated, no pulmonary stenosis, and he expects us to measure the pulmonary artery systolic pressure. And the last question is a big question, a lot of numbers, and out of this calculation, we should describe this diagnosis as a VSD or ASD, endocardial cushion defect, or BDA or coronary fistula. So this numbers will lead us to an answer. We will come back to this question, but this is a brainstorming. You find easy or difficult questions? 50-50? Okay, our lectures will be about only 4 points. So the first step of imaging is to localize the shunt. The shunt could be an ASD or VSD and BDA, and we will learn how to localize the shunt, intracardiac shunt. Then the second question we have to answer, is it hemodynamic significant shunt or not? Third question is about third and fourth about two terminology that we heard in the previous lecture, is about the pulmonary vascular resistance, how to measure, and do we have to give it as a number in every shunt that we face? And the fourth question is about QPQS ratio. It's always like that. It's a ratio, QPQS ratio. How to measure, and the question is, should we report the QPQS as a figure in each shunt or not? How to localize the shunt? We have different imaging modality. We have echo, we have CT and MRI, but echo remain the first imaging bedside imaging tool. So we have to find the shunt by echo in most cases. In that point, it's not a lecture to learn how to get an echo for a shunt, but in that lecture we have to know 4 principles about the echo. First thing about echocardiographic windows and the position of the probe, and color and Doppler in echo. This is the probe, So the probe will have a knob, a slight knob, or just a thing here in the probe, just to find the right to left in that probe. The windows for echocardiography are 4. The well-known one is apical, so here we put it in front of the apex, or parasternal in the parasternal left position. This is in adult and pediatric, the common 2 windows to do an echo. In congenital, we added 2 windows, a subcostal view and suprasternal view. So actually these 4 windows are mandatory or basic windows in each echocardiographic exam. The position of the probe. So actually, when you read the echo, we don't suppose that you do the echo by yourself. So actually you are interpreting the data that another one did for you. So you have to figure out where the probe goes. I will just go for one example and we'll ask you to interpret the other image. So you have something like that. It's an image of echo. First of all, you have to define the image of echo is like a pin. We have a neck and we have a base. A neck is smaller than the base. And at the side of the neck, it is the side of the probe. So here, this is a view that I don't know what is it, but what I know that the probe is at that point, so the probe is closer to the apex more than the base. Is it clear for that? Yes. So each echo view will be like a P. So we have a narrow neck and wide base. So we will go for that image. I don't care about the views, but I do care about where is the probe. So this is suprasternal views. So where is the probe? Above or down? Daphne? Up. So this structure is the big cephalic vein, and this structure is the right pulmonary artery. To which side the probe is closer? To the left. To the vein. So this is the vein, and this is the pulmonary artery. The probe is here. So it's closer to the vein more than the pulmonary artery. Okay, view that. For that view, this is a parasternal long axis view. Where is the probe? Above or below? Up. And this structure is the RV, and this structure is the LA. To which side the probe is closer? To the RV side. So the probe is closer to you. Okay. And this is another view, it's parasternal view. Left. The probe is up. Here is the neck. Okay. And as written here, this is the RVT, this is the pulmonary valve, and this is the left atrium. To which structure the probe is closer? To the RVT. Got it? Yes. Okay. Why do we care about the position of the probe? Because we will use something like color Doppler. And color, we have only 2 colors. Actually, there are 3, but they are red and blue. And red is any flow going towards the probe, and blue, any flow goes away from the probe. So the first thing to understand the color is to understand where the probe is. So can I have the same structure having blue color coding and the red color coding in another view? Yes. It depends on where you put the probe. Is that clear? Okay, we will have now some exercise about that. Okay, I will start by the first example, then we will go on by question. Okay, this is a view that we have the 4th chamber of the heart, we call it apical 4, and we have the probe here closer to the apex. So I expected that any flow that goes from the atrium to the ventricle will be coded in red, because it goes in that direction toward the probe. And any incompetence or regurgitation that's leaking from the valve, so it will be from the ventricle to the atrium, so it will be encoded as blue. Let us focus on this view. This is the left and this is the right, so we have here the tricuspid valve. So which is abnormal? The red color or the blue color? The blue. Why? It's correct. Because this blue color means that we have a mild incompetence, because the flow is going from ventricle to the atrium. So it's encoded in blue. Is that clear? Okay. This is the loop of the heart. So, yeah, I think it's a bit difficult, so we will go to, again for this example. Okay, this is the same view by color and without color. So where is the probe? You there? Where is the probe? Up. And if I call this is suprasternal view, so we have here a nominal vein, we have superior vena cava vein. So in superior vena cava vein, do you expect the blood to go towards the probe or away from the probe?
Away from
Why? This is correct, but why?
It's returning.
It's returning to the heart. So this is a very normal flow because we find it here that this is a blue flow. So this is the superior vena cava flow. Is this correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now we have this. We are familiar by this blue color. What does this blue color means in that views? Degradation. Why? Is going away from the probe. But we have here mild and we have here a severe. And here, in both of them, we find a new color. We find a color of green and yellow, and this is mosaic. Mosaic means that we have a turbulence that is really high velocity flow. So we have now blue, we have red color, and sometimes we have mosaic. We come across it like that. Okay. Now we have something else that we call it Doppler. What is Doppler? That we can measure the velocity of the flow that passing through the valves or through the vessel by measuring the velocity centimeter in second. So now here, this is the mitral. The flow across the mitral is towards the probe. So it's coded in red color. So we expected here, if we have a zero line, to find the flow above or below the zero line. We find it above because it's towards the probe. So we find it here. So and this is scale meant to be centimeter or meter. Here meter per second. Sometimes you can make it centimeter per second. But this is the speed of blood during the second. Okay. Now we have this is a leg. This is
Away from the probe.
tricuspid incompetence. And when we measure the flow by the Doppler, this is incompetence. We'll find above zero or below zero because it's away from the probe. So we have here, it is meter per second. So we have here the velocity of the tricuspid regurg is 4 centimeter per second. Is that clear? I will talk now about something it's calling Bernoulli equation. This is in Doppler, but we will come it later for that. What Bernoulli equation means that we can, if we would like to measure the pressure gradient between two chambers, that we know the pressure gradient in both of them. So this 80 and this is 30, so the pressure gradient is 50. But sometimes it's very difficult to know the blood pressure in all cardiac chambers. For example, the pulmonary artery pressure is unknown for us, right? And the artery pressure, we don't know except that we do CPB or something like that. So Bernoulli equation make a compromise for that. If you know the blood velocity between two chambers, and we do this equation, it's 4 multiplied by the velocity square 2, so it will be the pressure gradient across this valve. We use the Bernoulli equation in two situations in cardiology. We do to measure the gradient of stenosis in the valves like aorta and pulmonary and tricuspid and pulmonary, but this is not our issue in that lecture. And we use it to estimate the pulmonary artery pressure, which we will use a lot in this lecture. So you know what for we use Bernoulli equation. with Bernoulli equation, either to measure the gradient of stenosis of any valve of the 4 valves, or to measure the pulmonary artery pressure, to estimate the pulmonary artery pressure. Is that clear? So the first indication, we will not talk about it because it's a valvular disease, but we will talk about estimation of pulmonary artery pressure. And what I would like to say, that to keep our life easy, which has not happened a lot, the echo machine saved us from this Bernoulli equation. So for example, the TR maximum velocity is 4 meters per second, and he do the calculation for us and say it's 65. So actually the pressure gradient is 65. So the good news is, you know the Bernoulli equation, but you don't have ever to do it by your mind. But you know that the Bernoulli equation, the pressure gradient is 4 multiplied by the velocity root 2. Is it clear? Okay. So this is the physics of the echo, and we will use how to localize the shunt. The shunt that we will talk about is an ASD, VSD, and BDA. It's a hole in the wall. So we have the septum, interatrial septum, interventricular septum, or we have the separation between the aorta and pulmonary. We will find the hole. So, and the hole, and we will find also abnormal flow or unexpected flow through this hole. And we have to use all what we have know about echo to focus on that hole. So we will define the presence of a hole, then the direction of the flow in that hole, putting in our mind where the probe is. So you will start. You that. This is a view. Where is the probe? Above the flue. Right. This is because the neck is here. And this is the left atrium and this is the right atrium. Between both of them, what we have? We have a connection, or we have a hole in the atrial septum. Then we have here a confirmation that this is a real connection between both of them. We have a flow. And which color the flow is encoded?
Red.
So it means it's coming towards or away from the probe?
Towards the probe.
Towards the probe means it's coming from which atrium to which atrium?
Left
to right. So in this view, we have an ASD, we can measure it, and we have that ASD is shunting left to right. This is great. Okay. Daphne, where is the probe? Up. The probe is up. It's clear for everybody now? The probe is up. Okay, this person alone. So the structure is left atrium, left ventricle, left atrium, mitral, septum, and the aorta is coming from the LV. And this is the septum. Do we see a hole or communication between the two, and above it is the right ventricle for sure? Do we see a communication between two ventricles?
Yes.
Okay. And there is a blood coming across this communication?
Yes.
And which color code? Blue. Blue. This is another elastic flow, but the flow here is
Blue.
What does it mean?
RV.
To the LV. It's the right to the shunt across this. Oh, this is great. Alec. This short axis and the probe is above. It's an easy question. In the 2D, we don't find any flow. This is the septum, this is the left ventricle, and this is the right ventricle. What do we see by color?
Some muscular veins, some small.
What do you say?
It's from the
Do we is this is normal flow? This is abnormal flow, right? So we have a flow across the septum. Which color code have it? So it's alias, but mostly is red. So it's going toward the probe or away from the probe? Red is towards the probe.
Towards the probe.
Blue is away from the probe. So this is
Towards.
toward the probe. So what does it mean?
From the left.
So we have a defect in the ventricular septum, which we call VSD, ventricular septal defect, and the color is going from the left to the right. Okay. Again, Here, this is a short axis or modified short axis. We have here aorta and we have pulmonary, and this is the bifurcation of pulmonary, right? The probe is above or down? Above. So this is the pulmonary. We do expect the color code in the pulmonary to be blue or red? Blue, because it's coming from the pulmonary part down to that. Okay, look for this flow. What do we have? We have blue. This is the blue, but we have here red. So this flow is coming from here toward the probe. This is the flow of BDA, because this is descending aorta and this is the left pulmonary. So is it clear that we could localize and we could code the flow in the shunt? Any question on that part? Clear. Okay. So the answer of the first point, do we have to localize the shunt? Yes, in every echo report we have to localize the shunt. We have to say, is it left to right or right to left? And this is easy, and it's the gold standard to do it by echo. Now we will move to the second point. We have to comment that we have a shunt that is shunting ASD, BSD, BDA, that's shunting left to right or right to left or bidirectional. And the second point is to mention, is it hemodynamic significant or not? How do we assess the hemodynamic significance of any shunt? By 2 points. Does this shunt lead to a volume overload? Yes or no? And does this shunt cause an elevation in pulmonary artery pressure? Or the left to right shunt cause an elevation in pulmonary artery pressure? If it's hemodynamic significant, does it mean or is it not an equivalent to being an Eisenmenger? Elevated pulmonary artery pressure, it might be reversible, so we have to assess it. Okay. Volume overload. Any shunt from left to right will lead to volume overload, as Hatem discussed. Might be the left ventricle, it might be the right ventricle, and the bigger the shunt is, the more volume overload it will be. Okay, we can make a rule of thumb that any shunt anatomically above the tricuspid, it will lead to the dilatation in the right ventricle or right side. Any shunt anatomically below the tricuspid, it will lead to volume overload on the left ventricle because of, Hatem asked the same question before. Why? I don't think.
The LV.
No. Why? If I have a shunt above the tricuspid, it will dilate the right side. If I have a shunt below the tricuspid level, it will dilate the left ventricle. Why? If I have an ASD, it's above or below the tricuspid. It will dilate
the right side.
If I have a BSD, is it above or below the tricuspid?
Below.
It's below. It will dilate.
The left side.
Why?
Because the LVN diastole.
Because the shunt will not be in diastole, it will be in systole. So the blood will not remain in the ventricle to be dilated. Is that clear? Okay, we will have some exercise now. Based on that, ASD, it will dilate
Right.
the right side. BSD, it will dilate,
Left.
and BDA,
Left.
left. Because anatomically it's not above. Okay, right. And okay, the collaterals and pulmonary and the collaterals, is it above or below? If it's a significant collaterals, maybe it's difficult, it will dilate the left. I will answer that. But pulmonary venous drainage, if you have abnormality in pulmonary venous drainage, is it above or below the tricuspid?
To dilate the right side.
It dilates the right side. We will answer it like that. But if we make the tricuspid valve is our anatomical level, anything in shunt left to right above the tricuspid, it will dilate the right. In shunt below the tricuspid, it will dilate the left. Is it clear? Okay. In the evaluation of the volume overload, actually, in the clinical practice and daily practice, we use echo. Echo could be a quantitative method by Simpson rule and by the 3D echo, but actually in daily practice, in day-to-day clinical use, we don't use numbers for volumes in the echo. But we use an alternative for the left ventricle. We use it as a dimension. So you hear an echo in diastolic dimension, in systolic dimension. Although by echo we can measure the volumes, but actually it's a lengthy procedure and it's not done in the routine basis actually in research. So actually, for the left ventricle dilatation or volume overload, we use centimeter in measurement, the end-diastolic dimension and end-systolic dimension, and we have index for body surface area and for age. So we have rough ideas about the dilatation in the left ventricle. About the right ventricle, it's actually it's very subjective, and we don't have any figures for diameters for the right ventricle. But actually, right ventricle should be not more 2/3 of the left ventricle. So it's very subjective. You just compare it by your eyes and say it's dilated, it's mildly dilated, it's moderately dilated, but we don't have any numbers for the right ventricle. Is it clear? So in the left ventricles and echo, we don't talk about volumes, but we talk about diameters. And for the right ventricle, it's very subjective. You just measure it globally by eye. That right ventricle shouldn't be more than 2/3 of the L. Okay. The quantitative methods to measure the volumes for both ventricles are the cardiac MRI. So actually, this is the gold standard to measure the volumes. The way that we do it, I will go roughly for it. This is the ventricle. We cut it in slices, like we cut it vertical in slices. So here the base to the apex. And we draw the contours over these areas, and over the time we got something like that. This is the 3D for the volume. So we have the volumes of the left ventricle and we have the volumes of the right ventricle. And the way that we express it, like end-diastolic volumes, end-systolic volumes, and then we got the stroke volume and the ejection fraction. Is that clear? So the MRI is qualitative measurements for the volumes. Again, do we have in any shunt to say that RV is dilated by XX milliliter? No, we don't have, but sometimes we use it. So here we say that we have to localize the shunt. We have to say which direction the shunt is for, left to right or right to left. And we have to say, is it hemodynamic significant or not? One of the hemodynamic significance of a shunt that causes volume overload to which ventricle, left or right, we know the tricuspid valve rule. And do we have to measure it quantitative in each shunt? No, but we have to have an idea. So echo will give semi-quantitative ideas, but we don't use it in routine. But you know that CMR can do a qualitative assessment. Okay, the second point in the hemodynamic significance, does the pulmonary artery pressure increase or not? So again, the question, do we have to report it in each shunt? Yes, we do have to report the pulmonary artery pressure in each shunt that we have intracardiac. What is the best method to measure the pulmonary artery pressure is? Say it, don't be afraid. Say it, is? CAT, yes. This is the best way. The best way to measure the pulmonary artery pressure is direct measurement for the pulmonary artery pressure, right heart cath. So we will get 3 figures like this. So we have 25/14 between brackets 10. So this is systolic over diastolic, and this is the mean like we got in the aortic blood flow, aortic blood pressure. But this is not applicable to send each child or each patient for a cath lab to measure the pulmonary artery pressure. However, this is the accurate way. So do you remember the Bernoulli equation that we talked about it? And I said that we have in cardiology two major applications for Bernoulli equation, valve stenosis, and this is out of our scope, and we have estimation of the pulmonary artery. Actually, in the shunt, you don't have to have a figure. We would like to know that pulmonary artery pressure is not really that high in the way that it makes the closure of the shunt prohibitive. Do you understand? That we need to know, is it really low in a range? So that's why we can use estimation of the pulmonary artery pressure. So we have a couple of methods that's non-invasive, we can use it. This depends on echo, all what I'm going to say on echo. So as Hatem said, if you don't have a pulmonary stenosis, so actually the RV systolic blood pressure will be equal to the pulmonary artery systolic pressure, right? If you don't have a stenosis between the RV and pulmonary, so when the pulmonary valve open, the pressure in the RV will be equal to the pressure in the pulmonary artery. Let me be tricky a bit. If I have a pulmonary stenosis, which pressure will be higher? RV pressure will be higher than pulmonary artery because of the obstruction. Okay, this is good. Okay, if we estimate that the right atrial pressure will be between 5, maximum 15. Where I got from this? We got it from the CVB. So the right atrial pressure, the lowest will be between 4, 5, and the highest will be 15. So if I have normal right atrium, the pressure will be 5. If I have hugely dilated atrium like aneurysmal, the pressure will be 15. If I have something moderately dilated, it will be like 10. Okay, this is the second information. If I have tricuspid incompetence and I can measure the velocity, the blood across the tricuspid wave, like what we have in the previous example is 4 meters. So actually I got the pressure gradient, right? If I have a pressure gradient of, for example, 60, for example, if we have a pressure gradient of 60, and we have the right atrium is normal, so the RV pressure will be RA is 5, right? This is normal, and we have a pressure gradient between the right atrium and the right ventricle that is 60. This means that RV pressure is 55. You got it? So the pressure gradient?
The RV minus the RV.
No, actually not. So we have the pressure gradient. We have pressure gradient between the RV and the RA. The pressure gradient is 60. So it's supposed to be
65.
65. This is correct. So we have here the RV is 65 and this is 5. So if the blood is going between both of them, the pressure gradient is 60. You got it?
There is pressure difference. So this is
Sorry?
pressure gradient is pressure difference. So difference between RG and RA is 60. If the RA is 5, RB is 65.
So we have 65. You get it? It's the difference between the both channels. If we get that the pressure in the RV is 65 in systole, this means that pulmonary artery will be 65 because we don't have a stenosis. You got that? This is the Bernoulli equation that we use in each shunt that we have. This is a common question that we ask about a TR in each shunt that we have in ASD, and each shunt we had you ask about tricuspid regurg. What is tricuspid regurg? About, you got it? Why you have to admit it? Okay. So we do this example is the same example that we saw in the beginning. So here the tricuspid velocity is 4 meters. He calculated. So don't be afraid. In each velocity that you measure, the computer do it for you. So you don't have to do the Bernoulli equation by yourself. It's done. So it's 65. But you have to estimate the right pressure is 5, 10, 15. So we will go for that. Is it clear for that? Where we use the tricuspid?
So in the event that your TR pressure gradient is 50, what is your RV and systolic pressure gradient?
It depends on the right atrium. Is it right atrium is usually dilated? It's usually dilated, for example. So we will give it 15. So it's 15 plus 50. So it will be 65. If the right atrium is not dilated at all and it's small, so it's 50 plus 5 is 55. Got it?
Yes. And that approximates the pulmonary pressure.
Systolic
Pulmonary.
pressure. Is it clear?
Yes. And what's okay? And the normal systolic pulmonary pressure is 25.
Normal up to 25.
Up to
Up to 25. So you can find it 20, you can find it, it's up to 25. Okay? So we have the tricuspid regurg as a method to use it in the estimation of systolic pulmonary artery pressure, which is very useful in the ASD. When it comes to BSD, I will not go to the details, but when it goes to the BSD, you can measure directly the pressure gradient between the left ventricle and the right ventricle, right? So if we have this kind of BSD, the probe is above. It's okay, it might be advanced. This is the BSD, and the flow here is mosaic appearance, but the outer is the right, so the direction is towards the probe. So it's from the left ventricle to the right ventricle. And we got a jet here above the 0 line because the direction is towards the probe. And he said The maximum velocity is 4.5 meter per second. And we got an information that systolic blood pressure in this patient is 120. So systolic blood pressure is equal to RV pressure or LV pressure? LV pressure, okay. So we now have the pressure in the LV, which is 120. And he asked me about the RV systolic blood pressure. Can anybody do this calculation? Okay. 4.5 multiplied by 4.
81.
Are you sure?
4.5 square.
Say it again. Yeah?
B for square. The B square.
B square, so 4.5 square.
So it's 81.
Yeah,
So it's 81.
Yeah.
So now we have that LV is 120 and pressure gradient from the LV to the pulmonary artery is 81. Let us say 80. So the RV systolic pressure is. Oh my God, that's what you That's exactly why we're becoming doctors, right? So the RV pressure is 40. Exactly. And the pulmonary artery systolic pressure is again 40.
Yeah.
Again 40. Okay. So if we have a BDA, so the shunt in the BDA is left to right during systole or diastole or on both? And both. So actually here the flow in the BDA, this is a BDA, so we have the flow from left to right is above the zero, and he measured that we have velocity during systole is 3 and during diastole is 2. So we will not do any more mathematical calculation. So in systole you have 3, it's a 3 multiplied by 3 multiplied by 4, this is the pressure gradient. And in 2 is 2 multiplied by 2 multiplied by 4, it's the pressure gradient during diastole, and you've subtracted that from the systemic blood pressure, you will got the pulmonary artery pressure during systole and during diastole. Is that clear? So Bernoulli equation again. The second or the famous application for Bernoulli equation in the shunts, that you calculate the pressure gradient across 2 chambers, that one of them is unknown for you. And we use it particularly for the pulmonary artery pressure because again, in the hemodynamic significance, shunt, you have to answer if the pulmonary artery pressure is high or not. Okay. So let us say that the first 2 questions are mandatory to answer. You have to localize the shunt. You have to say in which direction the shunt is shunting the blood. And the second point is that shunt is hemodynamic significant. The 2 points or 2 arms for the significance are the volume overload and the pulmonary artery pressure increase. Hatem will say in the next lectures that the shunts are one, I think, of the unique cases that we say indication of closure. That we don't close any shunt, but maybe it's the only one. The only one that we have indication for repair. As far as I remember, this is the only lesson that we said is it indicated to be closed or not indicated to be closed. So focus on the hemodynamic significance. Okay. Then we will come to the pulmonary vascular resistance and PPQS. What is the pulmonary vascular resistance? BVR is pulmonary vascular resistance. Okay. The vascular resistance have to be overcome by the blood to reach to this organ. So when we call the pulmonary vascular resistance is the resistance by the lung that blood have to overcome to reach to the lungs. Is it clear? Okay. In the pulmonary vascular resistance, we use it as numbers. So actually we have figures for pulmonary vascular resistance and we refer it by Wood unit. Actually, it's complicated because it's about the flow and about the pressure. So you will find that we have to give a very long unit for that. But we use it Wood unit. It's naming after the pioneer in the cath lab, Paul Wood. And the normal, I think Hatem will be a bit anxious about 5. It's less than 4, as he said. It's about 4. And the pulmonary vascular resistance that's really elevated is 8, and between them is grayish area. So it is grayish area. It's not that high. Okay. So we know that the pulmonary vascular resistance is number ended by Wood unit, and the normal is to be less than 4. So do we have to measure the pulmonary vascular resistance in each shunt? Okay. The only way to measure the pulmonary vascular resistance is a cath. There is no other imaging modality till now to measure pulmonary vascular resistance except cath. So this is an invasive. And we don't have an estimation for the pulmonary vascular resistance like we did in the pulmonary artery pressure. So actually in the pulmonary artery pressure, it is also an invasive measure, but we have an estimated non-invasive that is enough to give us the same idea. But the pulmonary vascular resistance is only by the invasive way. So the answer is no, we don't have to give the figure of pulmonary vascular resistance in each case. But when we have to give it in older children, like Hatem said, so when we suspect a pulmonary vascular disease as a result from this shunt, so we have to catheterize the child. And when there is discrepancy between the shunt size and clinical data, so we have a very large shunt, but the shunt is asymptomatic. So you got it? Or we have congested lung, but the saturation is 80 or 70. So something is wrong about that, so you have to, and my advice is to keep low profile, to send the child for measuring the BVR if there is any doubt. As Hatem explained, it's very dangerous to close a shunt in high pulmonary vascular resistance, and you have to test is it reversible or not. And you hear from Hatem reactivity test that when the pulmonary vascular resistance is really high, so we have to challenge the lung and give some oxygen. So we have to see or to check the response of the lung to that oxygen. If it's still reversible, it will dilate again and the pulmonary vascular resistance will drop as a figure. If not, so pulmonary vascular resistance will keep the same. So my question is, when do we have to do the reactivity test? When the pulmonary vascular resistance is normal? When the pulmonary vascular resistance is high? When it's high. So if the child is catheterized and the pulmonary vascular resistance, for example, is 3, do we have to put him on oxygen? No. So 3 is normal, 4 is normal. If it's 6, 7, 8, so we have to challenge the lung. Okay? Is it clear that we do the pulmonary vascular resistance by cath, but when indicated, and the reactivity test only when the pulmonary vascular resistance is high. Now we will come to the terminology QPQS. So QP is quantitative flow in pulmonary and quantitative flow in systemic. And I had to go through that. I'd like to say the same question. Do we have QPQS as a ratio? So the normal ratio is that the blood is going to the lung equal to the blood going to the systemic. So we expect a ratio of 1. Of more blood going to the lung than the body, it will be more than 1. If less blood going to the lung and more blood going to the body, so it's less than 1. So actually it's a ratio, so we have to know the ratio. Do we have to give this figure in each shunt that we had? So I had an ASD, shunting left to right, it's hemodynamic significant shunt, and the pulmonary artery pressure is 20. So I will not go for pulmonary vascular resistance. Do I have as a cardiologist to say what's QPQS in that case? Actually not. We don't have to say the QPQS as a ratio unless also we have a doubt about the case, so we have to measure it as a ratio, or do we have an answered question about the patient? This is the same like the BVR. How to measure it? As said Hatem, it's old method, but still good. It's fake methods by the same gas diffusion by oxygen, and in the lecture I will give some information about this exercise. We will do it in other lecture. But I would like to say that the QPQS by fake methods, it depends on oxygen diffusion. So it depends that it traces the normal circulation, so more oxygenated blood in the aorta and less oxygenated blood in the pulmonary. So when it comes to single ventricle, or when it comes to the TGA physiology, that actually the pulmonary is receiving more oxygen than the aorta, so actually all the calculations are not functioning. So actually the cath, as Hatem said, is the gold standard to measure the QPQS. In all cases, like our lesson today is shunting, because we have more oxygenated blood in the aorta more than the pulmonary. But in complicated cases, when it's not the case, when we have mixing, we have same saturations in the pulmonary and the aorta, or more oxygenation in the pulmonary. So it's not wise at all to do fake methods, because we don't measure the flow, but we calculate the flow as said by hand. You get the point? So sometimes you have to face that you have to send the child or the patient to do measurements of the QPQS when fake methods is not at work. We will go for that by meters. So again, for all non-invasive, because the fake method is invasive, so X-ray is not quantitative. Echo has no place at all in measuring the QPQS. CMR is a gold standard to measure the QPQS in the abnormal situations, but also in shunts. If it's easier for MRI to measure the QPQS in difficult situations, so in shunts it's just a routine work. Be careful, the CMR does not measure pressure. So actually, when you have a shunting case like the lesson today, and you would like to measure the BPR, it's wise to use the CAT to measure the QPQS. But when you have a difficult case like TGA, so actually you have to do the BPR by CAT, and you have to do QPQS by MRI. You understand the point? So sometimes you have to combine the same information from one imaging modality, but sometimes you have to admit the limitation of each information to do it. So MRI does not measure the pressure. MRI measure the flow. Okay, I think it is a good chance to introduce some basics MRI for that. This is a famous sequences by MRI. Sequence means imaging tool. So it's famous sequence by MRI that we have two images like that, and we have one picture like that. It's very noisy. I don't know if in your country that ever the TP shut down. Shutting down?
Yeah.
And we have the same? And you have the same image? I think it's not in that era anymore. In old days, in my days,
It was there.
it was there, that's closing at 9 p.m. and you have this. That's okay. It sounds being the international phenomena, that this noisy picture, we don't have this noisy picture. Yeah, this was also news. So this noisy imaging, we don't have any other image in MRI. Looks like that. It is for flow dynamic. It has a very complicated name, phase contrast cine images, but as a clinician, we use it like flow measurements. So in the flow measurements, we cut any vessel, any vessel, we cut it perpendicular. So it comes that we have a circle for that vessel, like this, and we drew contours. You can join us in the CMR lab to see how it's going on, to draw contours around the vessel. So actually, you're tracing the amount of blood going in that vessel. So you can do it for the aorta, you can do it for the pulmonary. So you don't estimate the amount of the blood going there, but you calculate it. It doesn't matter if it's oxygenated blood or deoxygenated blood, it's blood or fluid, whatever. It's fluid hemodynamics going in the tank. We trace this vessel all over the cardiac cycle in systole and diastole, and the post-processing or the machines give us this curve. This curve is the cardiac cycle, so we have here systole and diastole during the cardiac cycle, and here we have milliliter per second. So actually we have the graph here in systole, the forward flow of the vessels, and there is this is the shut, the zero line shutting of the valve, and here under the line is the backward flow or incompetence if there is any. Is it clear? So now we have a sequence in MRI or image that we can encode the flow in each vessel to measure during the cardiac cycle how many millimeters or how much millimeters passing through this vessel. So if we have 60 millimeter per cardiac beat in aorta and 60 in pulmonary, so QPQS is. If we have 120 in pulmonary and 60 in aorta, it's 2. You got it? So you actually we make this QPQS in that way. Okay, this is how we measure the pulmonary. So actually we crossed the pulmonary and we got this circle and we measure it, and we can do the same for the aorta. And this is the aorta, we cut it, we have it as a circle, and we draw the contours all over it. Listen carefully for that, and we will explain it later. QP means or actually QP does not mean the flow passing in the pulmonary artery. QP means the flow going to the pulmonary circulation. And QS does not equal to the aortic flow. It means that the blood going to the systemic circulation. Sometimes you have collateral, sometimes you have collateral, blah blah blah. We will go through that. So sometimes you have to double check your information. So if the blood goes through the pulmonary artery to the lung and return from the lung into via the pulmonary veins to the left atrium. So actually the pulmonary artery should be equal to the pulmonary veins. So actually sometimes we have to measure the pulmonary veins separately. So we have here that QP equal to the pulmonary artery flow equal to the pulmonary venous flow. And in the QS is equal to the aorta, it's going to the all over the body and coming back to the heart via superior vena cava and inferior vena cava. So actually the combination of the superior vena cava and inferior vena cava flow should be equal to the aorta. So actually the MRI, that it might be too much details, but it will help us in the coming lectures. That we meant by QS is the systemic flow, not the flow in the aorta. And we meant by the QP is the flow towards the lung, not only the flow going from the pulmonary. So by MRI, because it has no limitation to measure any vessel, so aorta should be equal to the superior vena cava and inferior vena cava, the submission of that, and the pulmonary artery should be equal to pulmonary veins. You got it? Okay. To recap, that QS is aortic flow or superior vena cava and inferior vena cava flow. QPS the pulmonary blood flow and pulmonary venous flow. Okay, I'm almost done. We will do some exercise about the shunt. Imaging of the shunt. The first two questions is mandatory to be answered. You have to localize the shunt. You have to say the direction of the flow across the shunt by echo. For the hemodynamic significance, you have to receive or to get not volumetric. You have to get volume overload. You mean volume overload via, for the left ventricle, via diameters. You have to say end-systolic diameters is so, and the end-systolic diameters. For the children, we have these four. For the adults, we have rough figures. For the RV, it's very subjective. It's mildly dilated, moderate dilated, but you have to say something about the ventricles. And you have to say the pulmonary artery pressure. You have to find your way, either it's tricuspid gauge, or the Bmax across the BSD, or the Bmax across the BDA systole and diastole. So you have to get a figure for the pulmonary artery, for estimated pulmonary artery pressure. For the pulmonary vascular resistance and for QPQS, you don't have to give it unless you have a doubt about the shunt.
Yeah.
Pulmonary vascular resistance is by CAF, QPQS is by CAF / MRI. You got what I would like to say? Okay. I think that I will leave. This is exactly what Hatem said, but we played around it by color. I will explain the ASD, but I will leave the BSD and BDA and the slides just to follow it up. If we say that we have an X amount of the blood is going through all the heart in series, so we have X amount in the left atrium, and we have X amount in the left ventricle going to the aorta, X amount going to superior vena cava and inferior vena cava, X amount, and the right ventricle X amount, and the pulmonary X amount, and going back to the left atrium via the pulmonary veins as X amount. Is that correct? Now we will suppose that we have an ASD. So we have an extra volume, we call it A at that level. If you follow that A, we will find it like that. So now the right atrium will be XA, right ventricle will be XA, pulmonary artery will be XA, and when it comes here, it will be an XA, but A will go through an ASD, and X will be in the left ventricle, and in the aorta will be X. And when you measure the volumes of the RB, it will be volume overload here. And when you measure the flow in the pulmonary artery, it will be XA more than the X. Is that clear for that?
Yes.
I'm done with this part of lecture. So again, we have to localize the shunt. We have to give an hemodynamic significance or insignificance for the shunt, plus or minus PPR, and PPR is a number with Wood unit, and QPQS is a ratio, more than 1, less than 1, or equal to 1. we might give it or not according to the case. Actually, this is all. Is it clear? Any question about that? Shall we go for pre-test now?
A question.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Okay.
I get to do that.
In the event that you have a large ASD and your pulmonary is dilated,
Yep.
sometimes it's pulmonary regurgitation.
Yeah.
How do you use that?
We use it like mean. We use the pulmonary incompetence. We come to it, and it's not in the Bernoulli equation, but we use the pulmonary incompetence as mean for the pulmonary artery pressure. We come it in ASD and BSD, but this is not Bernoulli equation, but this is pulmonary incompetence as a mean of pulmonary artery. Huh? It's clear? Any more questions? No? Shall we answer? Yeah. So, first question. Daphne?
Maybe this one.
Yeah? Okay.
BSD shunt left one is the volume of ion on which you going to go.
Agree? Anyone? Any objection?
No?
That's bad. Okay, the second one, you that?
Judy?
Sorry? Okay, so CMR can measure accurately all except the left ventricular end-systolic volume index, right ventricular end-systolic volume index. Index means the body surface area. QP, pulmonary artery pressure. So CMR can measure all except what?
Except the last one.
Pulmonary artery pressure, correct. Okay, the third one, Alec. In transthoracic echo, flow towards the probe is coded red or blue? Red. Okay. And the fourth one with that patient with, okay, my God, it's mathematical. Okay. Okay, I think we can do it. It's mathematical, and I make it that a patient with BDA where maximum velocity in systole is 4 and maximum velocity in diastole is 3, and pulmonary systemic blood pressure is 120/80. Can anyone do it?
56.
Hmm?
56.
Is
56.
56.
So
56. What did you do?
So
I became a doctor for the same reason. So I think I became a doctor.
So by Bernoulli's equation,
Yeah,
I-
4
square.
Yeah.
I calculated the maximum pressure
Yeah.
across that PDA, which is 64,
Yeah.
and then got the systolic blood pressure minus
Yeah.
the maximum pressure across the PDA,
Yeah.
which comes to 56.
56. Okay. Perfect. And the systole is 3 is 9 multiplied by 4 is 36. 36 is 36 is 80 minus 36 is equal to
80 minus 36.
24 with the yeah. Okay. So actually, roughly you got the idea. Okay. You that the accurate methods to measure the pulmonary vascular resistance is CAT, and it's measured in Wood. Okay. And you need 10 days with a large BSD. We'll have a science of pulmonary congestion. Might be tricky question because we didn't actually said that. Okay, I will answer that.
We can answer.
You can answer. Okay, go for it. True or false? Why is false?
Because the pulmonary pressure is still high.
Pulmonary vascular resistance is still high.
He mentioned it.
Yeah. Okay. Point for cadence. Yeah. The most known transthoracic echo windows are 4 windows. Enumerate.
Subcostal, parasternal, subcosternal, and apical.
Perfect. Okay, we're going in the right direction. Clinical signs of left to right shunt are all except recurrent chest infection, failure to thrive, sinus and clubbing, heart failure symptoms. Okay, any left to right shunt, the patient will not be blue. This is correct. Okay, and the ninth one, and actually this is the last one. This is very complicated. This is pure MRI. We didn't go through it in that way. We will keep it for QPQS lecture. Patient with an ASD, shunting left to right, tricuspid regurg is 3.5, which is equal to the pressure gradient is
49.
49. Shall I leave that? Can you do it quickly, madam? Can you do it
3.5
quickly?
times 3.5 times
3.5 multiplied by 3.5 by 5, and the right atria is usually dilated. What does it mean? 15.
plus 15.
15, 1.5, and no pulmonary stenosis. So the estimated pulmonary artery systolic pressure
64.
64.
Yes.
Okay, 64. So it is the TR plus 15. That. Okay.
Okay.
Good job.
Yes.
I'm done. Any questions more? Okay. Thank you.